All right, Justin.
Thank you so much. So, hello everyone. My name is Holly Reynolds. I'm the senior product designer here at GitLab on the plan team in the project management group. You may have gotten a sense from Alexis's presentation that work items is a very big project with a lot of moving parts, and our groups within plan are working together to ensure that we create one deliverable that will make sense to the user. But I'll talk in a moment kind of about the parts that they're working on versus the parts that we're working on. So today I'm talking about creating tasks. And I just wanted to give a little bit of quick background in case you don't recall. I've talked about work items before at showcases, but just in case you don't recall the details of it. Work items is essentially, and Alexis summarized this nicely, but they're the base objects for giving users the ability to eventually have customizable objects such as issues, bugs, tasks, features, things like that. And there's more to it than that, but just to kind of simplify it. The value of work items are that we believe they will give users the ability to customize their work items, the documentation of their work, such as issues and features and incidents, to best suit their business. This includes how those work items are categorized, related to one another, and the option to even add or remove functionality or widgets for the type of work item that they've defined. So I created a couple of user needs statements just to kind of help us be on the same page from the team perspective and to help me ensure that I'm thinking through everything that we need to for this. So the first is Parker, our busy product manager, needs to easily create a work item that they can associate with a particular type in order to access more accurate reporting on work in progress. So they need the ability basically to categorize work items, which we already have this, but we're going to be expanding on it. But they want the ability to categorize by bug or issue or task, etc., for more granular reporting and understand the capacity and work in progress. The second is related to Parker needing the ability to easily create a work item that they can customize the functionality for in order to have a simplified experience through only being exposed to functionality that's essential for that work item type. And again, there's more to work items than just these things, but just to kind of touch on a couple of key points. So eventually we want to give users the ability to choose only what they want to see in terms of widgets and metadata for work item objects. We believe that this is going to simplify the user experience and ensure the most relevant information is visible for the users, depending on the type of work item that they've selected. So as Nick noted earlier, one of the most common complaints in SUS is that we have a really busy UI. Another is that it feels to some users as if it were targeting those with highly technical backgrounds. I watched an interview with a product manager recently who had a very telling statement that they felt that GitLab was a tool that they could use that was made for someone else. So they felt that they could use it, they had to use it, but that it wasn't necessarily made for them. It felt difficult for them in some ways. So we're hoping that this will also help them with that experience. So for MVC of work items, we're moving forward with the first work item type of task. So what is the value of a task? Well, users need to have the ability to break down issues into smaller chunks of work that can be assigned to individuals and allow for better insights and accountability at the member level. So currently people are using epics to issues to do this, but we found that they're requesting more granularity and more control. So our user needs statement here is that Parker needs to quickly and confidently understand the capacity for each team member in order to know how to allocate resources and ensure that the team is not overloaded or underutilized. So by providing tasks, users can easily assign multiple people to pieces of work within a single issue and eventually apply weights to those. We've actually had teams internally, and I believe Jackie's team was one of them, so I would love to speak with you all about this. But we've had teams internally who want to provide a UX weight, for example. And in some cases, people have created a separate issue that's empty and just has a weight applied to it just to be able to accomplish this and be able to track this. So tasks should eventually eliminate the need to have to do that sort of odd workaround. And as you can see there, it's a very popular idea. Users really, really want this particular feature, and it's been requested several times. So the business value of work items, again, large picture just to keep it simple for time constraints. We want to increase the growth rates for plan. This is one piece of the puzzle that enables us to be able to compete better in the marketplace, increase retention rates for plans. So because plan features will be able to grow with our customers, it'll be more scalable. It's much less likely that hopefully that they will look for alternative solutions when they need to iterate and change their internal processes. And then also it helps us to maybe avoid unnecessary costs. So because users are doing this sort of workaround with epics and issues, we're continuing to put money into things like adding assignees to epics so that they can kind of build on that workaround. But really what we need to do is address the core problem and not necessarily continue to build on a Band-Aid approach. And we believe, again, that tasks will help with that and therefore reduce some of these unnecessary costs. So I want to just really quickly show a couple of examples, be mindful of time. So I'm going to rush through this, but if you do have any questions and want me to go deeper, please let me know. I have also included links to the Figma files for work items and tasks. Tasks is newer in that we initially were going down the path of focusing on creating a feature, and we have changed that to a task, which is really kind of a different use case. So the focus has shifted a little bit, and I'm still kind of in the earlier stages now of doing some of the research for that. But the thought is that for the MVC of tasks, we would give users the ability to convert a checklist item, which is known currently as a task. Yes, I have concerns about the terminology there, and one of my goals in the research is to understand what users' mental models are of those things. But you've got a current concept of a checklist in Markdown, like in a description or in a comment field within the product. So I explored several ways to maybe give users the ability to interact with one of those tasks and quickly convert them to this official task object. I didn't love this idea, but I like to explore even sometimes the ideas I don't love, just to be sure that I kind of invalidate them as a possibility in my own mind. So in this case, having an explicit make task button that displays when you hover over one of these items, that would push the content. I don't like the bounciness that would happen there, so I went ahead and skipped that one. Another is to have maybe a make task button that displays at the end. That begs the question of, does it consistently display at the end of that section, or does it need to display at the end of the line, in which case there's inconsistency in the UI and the interaction there. So probably what I would prefer to do in that case is make it consistent regardless of the length of the content of that checklist item. Another is an option to just have an icon, and when you hover, you have the ability to convert to task. This is very similar to one of our competitors and what they're doing. So it would have a sense of familiarity and hopefully thereby make it a bit easier to learn more quickly for people that are coming from that competitor. And then another option here is providing an ellipsis menu. This, I think, is going to be more scalable. We'll be able to add more items into this eventually. I don't believe this remove option here is necessarily in VC, but giving the ability to convert one of these items to an actual object that can be tracked, that can have assignees, that can have weights applied to it. That's what we're looking to accomplish by having this convert to task option. And then lastly, having this option on the left. So I had a great conversation with Mike Nichols about this recently, and we agreed that people have a tendency to put these items on the right, but it does create kind of an odd sense in terms of the interaction, because you either have to ask the question of, do we align it all here? In which case there's a large gap between the checklist item and the button, or do we put them at the end of the line, in which case, you know, there's kind of a bounce, and it makes it a little harder for the user to know where to find those things. So an alternative was maybe putting the ellipsis at the start of the line on the left. And this drag and drop is not in VC, but I wanted to include it here just to kind of see how those two pieces may look together. And in that case, it would always be present on hover, always in this particular location. So that's something else that we have explored, and that interestingly seems to be the winner so far from some initial internal testing that I've done. So why offer tasks from the checklist first? I created a couple of user hypotheses based on some conversations with a PM recently, that theoretically, and I've seen this also from user feedback, that people want the ability to have a bunch of tasks quickly documented and then be able to eventually convert those to issues when the time is right to do so. But they don't necessarily want to create a formal issue for them yet. Another option is that people, again, want the ability to create weights and add weights and assignees to things, but maybe they're just doing high level planning right now. They're not ready to get that granular yet. So this gives them the ability to sort of create a placeholder, and then eventually they'll be able to convert those tasks to an issue if they choose to. Some additional benefits of going with this approach are to reduce implementation complexity and therefore hopefully get to delivery faster, and to reduce the impact on the existing user flows with issue tracking. So we don't want to overcomplicate the experience for people using issues currently. We want to keep that as clean and simple as possible so that we can continue to test and learn about tasks without necessarily interrupting that flow. There are a few options here that I've explored as well as to how it looks when something has been converted to a task. For time's sake, I won't go through these in depth, but you can see some of those options include showing the status of the task, the title with a link to that task, as well as the fact that it is a task. Eventually, you may see, instead of just task listed here, you might see incident, you might see bug, or some of the other work item types that we would have included. So for MVC, the thought is initially that one of these tasks, when something has been converted to a task, it would show as a related item. Eventually it will not be, it will have kind of its own separate thing from what I understand. This is not proposed design. Product planning is going to be handling this. I only include it here just to kind of help with like a big picture concept of how all of this might fit together. So just know that this is not proposed design. This is just me kind of saying, here's kind of how some of these things may fit into the current issue view. And then we're also exploring, again, with work items, if you've been following this at all, you know, we've talked about going mobile first. We've talked about ensuring that users don't lose context by offering this information in a side panel or in a modal. I prefer the side panel approach so that you can still see what's happening in the issue, particularly for tasks, because they will eventually be kind of a child element of an issue. And so the thought was if they click from maybe this related items list, then the task information populates here. There are some questions still outstanding surrounding how this surfaces in the UI, but let me go ahead and wrap up because we're running out of time. So for the MVC, there's goals that I have in terms of research. The top two goals are to have better understanding of existing user knowledge and experience, as well as to test and validate some of the proposed solutions. So I have questions surrounding mental models users have about the current concept of tasks, as well as mental models that users have surrounding tasks versus issues, because they can conceptually be kind of similar. So I want to understand that. We also have questions about the prefixes. Do we use the hashtag like we do with issues? My thought is no, but I want to test this and get insights on it, as well as the differences in terms of the detail view. People are going to see different things when they access these. So how does that impact the experience? And the opportunities with the existing solutions as well. And then testing some of the proposed solutions. So validating the solutions that have been outlined so far and getting feedback on those. We do have an initial roadmap. Adding weight is going to be one of the first things, because this is one of the most popular reasons why users want tasks, is to be able to assign a weight and be able to understand who is working on what in terms of an issue, having multiple people, being able to clarify the specific parts of the issue that those specific people are working on and break that down a little bit further. So weight will be one of the first things. And I'll let you review the roadmap in your own time. But if you do have any questions, please let me know. Again, I apologize for rushing, but happy to answer any questions, maybe async for time's sake at this point, if anybody has any. Thank you so much for your time.
Great showcase. Thank you so much, Holly. We do have a question, but we can kick it to async. I just want to plug two different things. One, ask your questions, continue to ask questions in the agenda. Our designers and tech writer will be answering them. Please continue that conversation. Also remember, we have two async showcases. Please take the time to jump in on those as well from Daniel and from Austin as well. And thank you so much.